I found my wife's affair with our attorney, and now he's claiming she transferred $300, $0 of our savings into his account before disappearing. How do I fight for my property when she swears she's innocent? Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife, Emily, would turn out to be a cheat, and worse, that she'd pull something so cold and calculated that it would shake me to my core. But here I am, typing this out, trying to make sense of the chaos that's taken over my life. It all started innocently enough, at least, that's what I told myself. We had been married for about 8 years, everything seemed fine, or so I believed. Emily was the woman I thought I knew, smart, charming, a little bitchy sometimes, but generally loving, or so I thought. The first signs of trouble weren't obvious. It was subtle things, late nights, a little more secretive on her phone, a few unexplained absences. I chalked it up to work stress, or maybe she was just tired. But then I noticed her phone vibrating constantly at odd hours, and her messages started to seem more guarded. I'd catch her deleting texts or hurriedly locking her phone when I entered the room. I didn't want to believe it, but something felt wrong. One night, I was working late at the office, something I'd done a lot lately, and I decided to check her email on our shared computer. I know I shouldn't have, but I was desperate for answers. That's when I saw it. An email from a guy named Jake, an attorney we'd recently hired for some legal stuff. The subject line just said, "Our secret." I opened it and saw a series of messages that made my stomach drop. They weren't about legal work. They were about meeting up, about being discreet, and about how much they wanted to see each other. My mind raced. I looked at the timestamps. She'd been meeting him during the day, sometimes when I was at work, sometimes when I was out of town for business trips. She'd been lying to me for months. I felt sick. I started to piece things together. The late nights, the strange phone calls, the way she'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. And then I found the real kicker, an email from Jake with a transfer request. She transferred $300, $0 of our savings into his account. That's when I knew she wasn't just cheating on me emotionally. She was stealing from us too. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands trembling. This wasn't just some fling. She'd orchestrated a financial betrayal that could ruin us. I felt a rage I'd never experienced before. How could she do this? How could she lie so blatantly? I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious at the same time. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew this was just the beginning. The pieces were falling into place, and I had no idea what was coming next. The moment I saw that transfer request, everything changed. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. Emily had always been a bitch about money, stingy, manipulative, but I never thought she'd go this far. That $300, $0 gone in a blink, transferred into Jake's account like it was nothing. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I had to be careful. This wasn't just about some affair anymore. This was about financial betrayal on a scale I couldn't ignore. I waited until she came home that night, feeling like I was walking on thin ice. When she walked in, all smiles, acting like nothing was wrong, I felt my stomach tighten. I told her I needed to talk about something serious. Her eyes narrowed, a little smirk playing on her lips like she knew something I didn't. I played it cool, but inside I was boiling. I told her I'd seen her emails, the transfer, everything. Her face instantly changed. She started to lie, of course. "It's a mistake," she said. "Jake must have done it without telling me. It's just a misunderstanding." I didn't buy it. How could I? I told her I had proof, screenshots of the emails, the transfer confirmation. She looked furious, then desperate. She tried to spin it, say I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. "You're accusing me of stealing from us over some stupid affair. Grow up," she snapped. Her tone was bitter, like I was the one at fault. That's when I realized she was good at lying, better than I thought. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she didn't know anything about the money, and that Jake was just a lawyer doing his job. Yeah, right. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and sadness. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I'd always thought we had some kind of trust, some foundation. Turns out that was just an illusion. She was capable of anything, even stealing from me. I was starting to see her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for money and her own pleasure. The worst part, she still maintained that innocent, bitchy act, acting like I was the crazy one for even questioning her. That's what cut the deepest. Her denial, her innocence act, it was all just a game to her. In that moment, I felt the cold realization settle in. This wasn't just about her cheating anymore. It was about her betrayal of everything we'd built. I felt my jaw clench, my fists tight. I knew I needed to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not only for my own dignity, but for what she'd stolen from us. I started to think about what my next move should be. I knew I couldn't just let this go. The betrayal ran too deep, and the money, our savings, was gone. It was time to fight back, to get my property and maybe even expose her for the con artist she'd become. But I also wondered, was I too late? Had she already covered her tracks? And what would Jake do now that I knew? The game was just beginning, and I was already losing my mind trying to keep up. The next few days were a whirlwind. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, smug, innocent, pretending she didn't know anything about the money. I started digging deeper into her accounts, trying to track where that $300, $0 had gone, but she'd been smart. She transferred most of it out of her account and into various shell companies, fake accounts she'd set up in her name, and even some offshore accounts I'd never heard of. It was a web, and I was just beginning to understand the scope. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her act. She was still acting like the victim, crying about how I was accusing her of stupid things, how I didn't trust her. She told her friends I was overreacting, that I was paranoid and jealous. She was good at spinning her web of lies, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. I needed proof, hard evidence that would stand up in court, because I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail to keep the money, to keep her lies intact. One night I decided to hire a private investigator. I needed eyes on her, someone who could follow her, find out where she was going, who she was meeting. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I couldn't trust her to tell the truth, especially not after the lies she'd already told. Within a few days, the investigator reported back. Emily had been meeting with Jake almost every day, sometimes in fancy hotels, sometimes at her sister's house, always with someone else. Watching her back, it was clear she wasn't planning to stop or admit anything. She was doubling down, trying to cover her tracks. That was the tipping point. I knew I had to act fast. I started gathering all the evidence I could, screenshots, bank statements, witness accounts. I also contacted a lawyer, a guy named Mark, who specialized in financial crimes and divorce cases. I told him everything, and he listened carefully, then told me I had a strong case to recover the stolen money and to push for full custody if it came to that. He warned me that Emily would try to fight me tooth and nail, spin more lies, and probably try to claim I was abusive or unstable. But I was ready for that. I'd had enough of her manipulations. One afternoon, I confronted her again. I laid out everything I had, proof of the affair, the transfer details, the investigator's reports. Her face twisted into a look of pure rage. She shouted, called me jealous, insecure, and accused me of being paranoid. When I pressed her about the money, she just sneered and said, "You're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous. Because I'm prettier than you and I have a better lawyer now." That was when I realized she was completely detached from reality, convinced she could get away with anything. I told her I was done playing her game, that I'd see her in court and get back what she stole. She looked at me like I was some kind of fool, but I knew I had to follow through. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had some clarity, some proof. Dread because I knew this was going to get ugly. Emily wasn't going to go quietly, and I would have to fight her tooth and nail. But I was done being the victim. I was tired of her lies, her manipulations, her sneaky affairs. I was going to take everything back, my money, my dignity, my life. It was a long road ahead, but I knew what I had to do. The betrayal was complete, and now I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The court date came faster than I expected, and I was already preparing myself for the worst. Emily was furious. Her bitchy attitude was on full display. She tried to paint herself as the innocent victim, claiming I was just paranoid and jealous that she hadn't done anything wrong. She even had the nerve to cry to the judge about how I was controlling, how I didn't trust her, and how she was the victim of a terrible misunderstanding. It was classic Emily playing the victim, twisting everything to her advantage. But I had the evidence and I was ready to use it. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything. The emails, the transfer documents, the investigators' reports. I told the court how Emily had been having an affair with Jake, our lawyer, and how she had transferred our savings into his account before disappearing. I explained how this wasn't just about infidelity, but about a calculated financial theft. I showed the court the email proof, the bank statements, and the investigator's report. Emily's face went pale when I produced the transfer confirmation. She tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. During the hearing, Emily's lawyer tried to spin her story, claiming she was innocent, that the transfer was a mistake, that Emily was a victim of my accusations. She even claimed that I was abusive, trying to turn the tables on me, but I knew better. I kept my composure and stuck to the facts. I explained how Emily had been unfaithful, how she'd lied, and how she'd stolen from us. I asked the court to freeze her accounts, investigate the transfer, and return the stolen money. I also filed for full custody of the kids, knowing Emily's manipulative nature. I wanted to protect my children from her chaos. The judge listened carefully and seemed convinced. It was clear I had a strong case, and I could see some of Emily's bravado fade. After the hearing, the court ordered an investigation into the transfer, froze her assets, and scheduled a follow-up hearing. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I had taken a stand and the truth was finally out. Dread because I knew Emily wouldn't go down without a fight. She was already planning her next move, I could tell. And I also knew that this was only the beginning of a much longer battle. In the days that followed, Emily's behavior only got worse. She started threatening me, saying I'd regret this, that she'd make my life hell. She even tried to contact some of her friends to spin her version of the story, claiming she was innocent and I was just jealous and controlling. But I didn't care. I was done trusting her. I knew now that she was capable of anything, and I had to protect myself and my children. I hired a new lawyer who specialized in family law and financial crimes, just to make sure I was prepared for whatever she threw at me next. Looking back, I realize how blindsided I was. I thought I knew her, but she turned out to be someone else entirely. A manipulative, selfish woman willing to destroy us for her own benefit. The betrayal cut deep, but I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours, even if it means tearing down the illusion of the perfect life you once thought you had. I still have a long road ahead, but I'm determined to get my property, protect my kids, and finally put this nightmare behind me. After the court hearing, things didn't magically get better, of course. Emily was still furious, still claiming she was innocent and still trying to spin her lies. But I had the court's support now, and the evidence was on my side. I kept pushing forward, working closely with my lawyer, Mark, to build a solid case. Meanwhile, Emily's behavior grew more erratic. She started showing up at my house unannounced, yelling, crying, and trying to manipulate the situation. She'd scream about how I was destroying her, how she was the real victim here, and how I was just a jealous control freak. One day, she showed up with a bunch of her friends, claiming she was taking back what was hers, and demanding access to the house and the kids. I told her she needed to leave, that everything was being handled legally. But her threats grew more aggressive. She threatened to ruin me professionally, to drag my name through the mud, and even hinted she'd make false accusations of abuse if I didn't back off. That's when I realized she was willing to do anything to keep her lies alive and her money hidden. I decided I couldn't just sit back anymore. I had to take control of the situation. I started documenting everything, her threats, her visits, her manipulations. I also hired a private security firm to keep watch on the house. I wasn't going to let her intimidate me or scare me into giving up. I also made arrangements to move some of our remaining assets into a safe account, just in case she tried to drain them again. My priority was protecting what was left, my property, my savings, and most importantly, my kids. Meanwhile, I also began preparing for what I knew would be a long legal battle. I filed for full custody of the children, knowing Emily's unstable and manipulative nature. I wanted to shield them from her chaos and lies. The court process was exhausting, full of hearings and depositions, but I stayed firm. Every piece of evidence I had collected was used against her: emails, bank statements, witness testimonies from friends and the investigator. I was slowly gaining ground, but I understood this wouldn't be over overnight. Throughout this hellish process, I couldn't help feeling a deep sense of betrayal. I thought Emily was the woman I married, my partner, my confidant. Instead, she turned out to be a liar, a thief, and a manipulator who'd betrayed me on every level. The hardest part was realizing I'd been blind to her true nature for so long. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it? How could she lie so convincingly? But deep down, I knew I had to move forward no matter how much it hurt. I owed that to myself, to my children, and to the life I still believed I could rebuild. I'm not saying it's over yet, but I've taken the first real steps toward reclaiming what's mine. It's been a brutal ride so far, and I know Emily won't give up easily. But I also know I can't let her destroy everything I've worked for. When you find out someone you love has been lying and stealing from you for so long, it changes you. I've learned that sometimes you have to fight with everything you've got to expose the truth, to protect what's yours, and to finally start healing from the betrayal. Looking back now, I realize how much my world has shifted since I first uncovered Emily's lies. The legal battles, the betrayals, the sleepless nights, none of it was easy. But I've come to understand something crucial. You can't let someone's betrayal define you, even if they try to destroy everything you've built. I've fought tooth and nail to get back what was stolen, to protect my kids, and to reclaim my sense of self. The process has been brutal, but it's also been a wake-up call. Emily's attempts to manipulate me, to turn friends and family against me, failed. The evidence I gathered was too strong, and the court saw through her lies. She's now facing the reality that her manipulations won't work anymore. Her assets are being recovered, and I'm finally in the process of rebuilding my life slowly, but surely. I keep reminding myself that I'm stronger than I thought, that I deserve better than the betrayal she threw at me. One thing I've learned through all this is that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to restore if it's not built on honesty from the start. But more than anything, I've learned that standing up for yourself is the most important thing. No matter how much someone tries to manipulate or lie, the truth has a way of coming out. It might take time and it might be messy, but eventually the truth wins. Now I focus on moving forward. I've cut ties with Emily completely. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, and I'm working on rebuilding my confidence. My kids are safe, and I'm determined to give them a stable life, free from the chaos Emily created. I also want to warn others. If you find yourself in a similar situation, don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. People can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, but sometimes in the best. This experience has taught me that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to find strength. I've lost a lot, but I've also gained clarity. I know now what I want, what I deserve, and I'm not going to let anyone take that from me again. The road to healing isn't easy, and I don't expect everything to be perfect overnight. But I can finally breathe a little easier knowing I've done everything I can to protect myself and my future. So if you're out there feeling betrayed and helpless, just remember, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to fight back. And above all, it's okay to prioritize your own well-being. The truth will come out, and your strength will see you through. I'm still healing, still moving forward, but I'm finally at peace with what happened. And that, for me, is the biggest victory of all.